Welcome to the Manna at the Tap, a podcast of Tapestry Ministries. It is Sunday, the last Sunday of January, January the 26th, 2025. The podcast offers a daily Bible reading from the Revised Common Lectionary. We at the Tapestry community call this reading the Manna we explore together. It is the spiritual nourishment our souls desire and the sustenance required to foster our spiritual growth. I'm Gloria, a fellow traveler with you on a spiritual journey, and together we can share insights and interpretations from the daily biblical lectionary reading, which will enrich our spiritual lives. We are in the final week of January. How are you making out with the goals you set out for yourself for the new year? We're back reading Nehemiah's memoir, which comes from the book of Nehemiah in the Old Testament. He was of Jewish descent and was born in Babylon. He held a prestigious position in the royal court as a cupbearer to the king and served as the king's personal confidant. Despite all of his success, Nehemiah felt sadness. His ancestors had been exiled to Babylon, now modern day Iraq, when the Babylonian Empire invaded Judah. While his family had thrived in their new environment, he could not forget the lessons imparted by his family that there would one day come a time when the people could return home to Judah and rebuild the city of Jerusalem and the temple. Political power had shifted from Babylonian to the Persian Empire, and a trickle of Jews were returning to the place few had left as children, while many had only heard about it. Life was not easy, and some chose to return to Babylon, citing the challenges of rebuilding. Nehemiah was afraid to ask the king, his boss, for a leave of absence, so he spent the first few months of the new year praying to God about the situation. One day, the king noticed Nehemiah's sadness and asked why and how he could help. This was Nehemiah's opportunity to clearly state his needs and goals to the king. He wanted to lead a delegation to Jerusalem to repair the wall that surrounded the city, and he needed the resources to do so. The king granted his request and appointed him as his representative, governor of Judea. Nehemiah set out for Jerusalem without delay, where he encountered opposition from people who had not been taken into exile. The opposition persisted throughout the time that Nehemiah and the community worked to complete the project. Despite the opposition, the task was accomplished successfully in just 52 days. This is a remarkable achievement. It was time for the returning families to get settled into their new homes. Nehemiah noted in his memoir that although the repairs to the wall were completed and the gate to the city was in place, there remained a lack of population and new homes inside the city. There was no sense of community. The lectionary reading includes selected verses from Nehemiah chapter 8. Let's explore how the people transitioned from a crowd into a community united by a shared commitment, the Torah. The people gathered and asked the priest Ezra to read the Torah aloud. Nehemiah noted in his memoir that all the people, including men, women, and children who could understand, wanted to hear the Torah read. Ezra was assisted by Levites who listened to the reading and then went amongst the people to explain the meaning. Ezra stood on a platform for 6 hours reading. What did Ezra read to the people? He shared the story of God's creation. He recounted how God had delivered them from Egypt under Moses' leadership. He told them they were in a covenant relationship with God and that God was with them. He read them stories, poems, songs, and he blessed them. And as the people listened to the proclamation of the word, it began to take shape and energize them into a community. In unison, they lifted their hands, praising God for his saving actions and his presence as they wept aloud. Nehemiah, Ezra, and the Levites instructed the people not to mourn or weep. This was a day of celebration. They were to go and eat rich food, drink sweet drinks, and share with those who had nothing. It was the words of the Torah that transformed that crowd into a community united by shared loyalty. Readings from the Torah can also serve as a guide to help us mend the broken walls in our relationship. With the assistance of a spiritual guide, we can learn to rebuild our lives and our relationships, which will allow us to transition from sadness to celebration and to live fully in the reality of God's love.